What's up, everybody? Justin here with Bluefin Bandai Namco Collectibles. I got David Clark, I got Mr. AJ down there, and we are celebrating New York Comic Con and having a blast. We got all kinds of sales going on right now, exclusives, bundles, promotions, even giveaways, giving away $5,000 in prizes. One lucky winner is going to go home with $3,000 in amazing collectibles. It's going to be fun. Go to bluefinbrands.com for all of that. Can't miss it. With us today is Dr. Travis Langley. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. I am ready for New York Comic Con.
Look at all those lanyards and badges.
I go pretty frequently.
Yeah, I think all of us have a pretty impressive collection of those things.
Those are from the before time.
Right. Before the dark times, before the COVID. Yeah, isn't that nuts? And so you actually teach at a college. How is school going right now? Are you guys do you actually have students in a classroom, or is it all remote?
It's a mix. There are students in classrooms spaced way apart. All my classes are online. They have been ever since March. And some of my classes have been online. I'm spending a whole lot of time working on adapting and coming up with good materials. And the spring, I was teaching one of my classes. My class is history and systems, regular psychology class, social psychology, and a class called Batman.
Nice.
That's the class.
That's the class.
Where was that class when I was in college, man?
But then in March we had to go offline, and we didn't get to be there in person because that's a very personal class.
Yeah.
And I had all kinds of comic book sources. The greatest Batman collections, 1 and 2, the greatest Joker stories, 2 versions of that, put them on reserve in the library, and then they couldn't go to the library. So they missed out. They got deprived of the full Batman class experience.
No kidding. Do you have a utility belt with all kinds of fun stuff that you can...
That's at home.
Okay. Yeah, I would need a lot of visual aids in a Batman class. It'd be fun. That's great.
I'm very fortunate to be at a school that lets me do creative ways of teaching, and they love the fact that what I do attracts nerdy students.
Right.
It gets good press.
It really does. I mean, all of us would sign up for a Batman class.
I would.
Yeah.
For sure. I would have several friends who would be down to join.
I retroactively hate my college now for not having
Yeah, the audacity.
right?
That's where it comes in handy being an alumnus. You can recommend things and say, you know what this school really needs? There's a Batman class.
The largest organization on campus is called the Legion of Nerds.
Love it.
Nice.
Yeah. My son who went here said, "Why wasn't there when I went to college? I'd have had more of a social life."
Yeah, no kidding. We were actually talking about that a couple of live streams ago, where there was a time when it was a bad thing to be a geek or a nerd, and now it's embraced. Everyone loves it. It is literally taken over pop culture to be a geek or a nerd.
I know. When I grew up, Fonzie was telling everybody that a nerd was the worst thing to be.
Right.
Although the only people we saw him hang out with were nerds, but still, it's still part of me. It's really weird to hear people say, "Oh, all this nerdy stuff you do, that's so cool." Those two words don't go together in my head. But you know what I'm best known for is the Batman book.
Yeah, I have mine right here too.
I have yes.
But mine's autographed. Is yours autographed by you?
No.
Mine's better. No, that's great. In fact, let's get into this book, because I actually ordered mine on Amazon, and I read it just prior to San Diego Comic-Con in 2012, I believe, just before I met you. And I read it on the plane and absolutely loved it. And then when you gave me a copy, I passed mine on to someone else and like, "Oh my God, you love Batman. You're going to love this book. Check it out." So it was really fun to explore everything from his childhood, growing up, and just all the different aspects that maybe poke and prod at Batman's mind and what keeps him up at night and keeps him going. It was a remarkable read.
Yeah, and it was a lot of work and a lot of fun to work on, because while I'm looking at a lot of psychology sources. You know, you've seen it, although it's been a little while, because I back up everything I have to say. But then there are also times when I got to go read some more comic books for the research. Or my wife would walk in, and there I am playing the movie The Dark Knight for the zillionth time. I would play that, and Batman Begins over. I rewatched all of them. Mm-hmm. Even the Abomination with the ampersand in the middle of the title.
What we don't talk about, right?
Oh, are you kidding? That's cinematic gold. That is a marvel in storytelling.
I had to
You're
think,
on thin ice, man. Thin ice.
I had when I was going through all the movies, I had to because most of it's more the comic books, but Batman in general. But the chapter where I'm going through all the movies, when I got to that one, what do I say? I mean, I have a footnote where I make a comment. Maybe its great lesson is that men have nipples, women don't. Figure out for yourself the psychological issues in that.
Yeah. How many nipples do bats really have? Shouldn't he have like 4 on each side?
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be better? You know, and then when all of his little bat kids come into the cave, he's just like this. That'd be a great cover. Like, feed me, Seymour.
It'd be all the Batman or Robin, basically everybody but Jason Todd, because
Yeah,
he is dead.
kind of.
Kind of.
Sometimes
Sometimes
got over it.
he got over being dead. Yeah.
He got better. Just got a little ointment, explosion ointment. It works.
Yeah.
No,
Well, in the Affleck version, he's either still dead or he became the Jared Leto Joker. People still argue about that one.
yeah, it's always fun for the fan theories. That's one of my favorite things about Star Wars too. Is like you get like maybe like a 30-second teaser, and then you have every single website and all the internet has their own theories on what's going on in that entire 30 seconds. And
Yep.
Batman is no shortage of fan theories as well.
I still say Mace Windu is alive. In fact, I committed to it. I even where's my Star Wars book? Oh, there's my, I got 13 of these things. So
Nice.
I even said in the bio at the bottom of it, it says his lightsaber is purple, and he will argue at great length about why Mace Windu, Yoda, and Ben Kenobi are all still alive.
Oh, there you go. It's better that way. They have their own little club, and they're the only ones that are allowed in it.
That's
Like a little treehouse.
Yeah, 13 books, but it started with Batman because especially if you're going to write about the psychology of superheroes and their enemies, you have to start with Batman.
Right.
He's defined by his psychology.
He's got problems. He's got issues, and we all got them, right? I mean, maybe not as relatable as your parents getting murdered in an alley, but I think we all have experienced something that we may have found challenging and tested us mentally, physically, and spiritually. And Batman has found a very unique outlet to dealing with his frustrations.
Great one. One that saved the Earth multiple times.
There you go.
So
I mean, it helps that
really-
he's smart and he's got money.
Yeah, I think I always argue that even without money, I always argue that Batman eventually would get to that level of success because he's Batman.
Sure, he's Batman.
Every timeline, he's him.
I can appreciate that.
I've always said you could take away the toys, you could put him where he has no access to the money, and he's still Batman. In the middle of nowhere, without the costume or any of that, he's still Batman. And that's actually one thing that later on, after I'd been saying this for a while, The Dark Knight Rises, they even played with that a little. Because once he gets out of that underground cave, he's in the middle of nowhere, doesn't have his passport, doesn't have his money, and we don't even question how he gets home.
Yeah, because he's Batman, right?
I won an argument at Anime Expo like a decade ago. We were arguing about who is better, Iron Man or Batman, and I said, strip them both down to their underwear, put them in a room. Tony Stark.
I like where this is going.
Iron Man is now Tony Stark, but Batman is still Batman. He needs nothing but himself. He needs no external anything. He's always him,
Sure,
So
that's fair.
yeah.
Who's your preferred Batman? We've had a lot over the decades. Do you have a favorite? If you could pick a favorite, no hurt feelings. You love them all, but gun to your head, you got to choose one. Who's your favorite?
Well, it depends on the story. I mean, I'll give you a real answer in a second, but it does depend on the story. Like, you can't take Christian Bale and insert him into the 66 show. Just as you couldn't take Jack Nicholson. Well, you could sooner have Jack Nicholson play the 66 Joker than you could, say, Ledger. Ledger does not fit in that 66 show.
Right.
So Adam West was perfect for that show. He played the humor just right. He played it straight, where adults would get the joke. Some liked it, some didn't. Little kids, it was daring do. It was adventure. So I was quite a few years along before I heard anybody call it a sitcom. It's like, Batman's not a sitcom. I didn't get the joke when I was a little kid.
Right.
It's Michael Keaton. I thought, why is Mr. Mom? No, they've got to be kidding. Mr. Mom, no. And then he was just fantastic in Tim Burton's version. Overall, Kevin Conroy. If you got to go. It's who it is. It's got to be Kevin Conroy for two reasons. One is the source, the material that he was playing with. Batman the Animated Series is the best depiction of Batman.
Mhm.
It took all the best stories, made up new ones like Mr. Freeze's new origin, that Harley Quinn, and other things they brought in. So he had the best stuff to play, but he also did the best depiction, and with just his voice. But you look at that man when he was younger, he needed to gain a little weight, but he looks like Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Right.
Question. Did you watch
Yes.
Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Yes.
How did you feel about how they did Kevin Conroy? We finally see him on screen as Batman. And then,
he's not in the costume, but they're playing this older one. We've now seen enough different Batmen. I've seen enough Batman dudes that we could go. This is that other universe. It's not their main universe. It's a universe where things went bad, and I still have a little trouble imagining Batman going that far off the track. But it reflects what Batman worries about himself. That's one of the reasons I've had so many discussions about why Batman won't kill. Entire panels about that issue. And on the list is that he's afraid that if he ever does, even the Joker, he worries that he won't stop. Now, Jason Todd in Under the Red Hood, comic book and the movie, both said, that's crap. Jason doesn't buy that. But it is something Bruce Wayne worries about himself. And like in the comics, they've got these metal universes, these dark
metal. Oh,
yeah.
And those all reflect Batman's fears about himself. Things that we look at him, it's like he can't go that direction, but it's something he worries about.
Yeah,
sure.
No, definitely. Like, actually, you're talking about like why Batman won't kill. I was in an argument the other day, as I often am, about superheroes, and people were saying, but the Joker just keeps breaking out and killing more people. I'm like, no, Batman's job is to put the guys in jail. It's society's job to take care of after that. Society failed, not Batman. He did his job.
Well, for Batman to exist and make any sense, society has already failed.
Right.
Once Frank Miller brought it into the comics that Gotham had the most corrupt police force in the nation, then it started to get a little more believable. It's like, well, okay, somebody running around with a mask to try to do the right thing and stir things up. People will go, why doesn't Bruce Wayne just give $1 billion to the police to make things better?
Credits.
But you cannot do it if it's the most corrupt police in the nation.
Right. He just shows up with a big check like Ed McMahon, like, hey, here's $1 billion. You get a new police
just driving Maseratis and shooting golden guns off. Like, no.
Right. You mentioned Michael Keaton, and his Batman's pretty lethal. In Batman Returns, which is a Christmas movie, he slaps dynamite on a guy. He burns another dude with the afterburners on his Batmobile. He's ready to party. That guy.
Yeah. Tim Burton's version does some killing. And then we know Affleck's version does, but Affleck's version is at a different point in his career.
Right.
For a while, my answer on why is he acting like that was because Zack Snyder. But then, actually, somebody who'd read my book commented about how in one of the chapters I said that when Batman most clearly had full-blown PTSD was after Jason Todd died in the comics. He had a full set of symptoms of PTSD after that. Right. He was functioning poorly. He was going to get himself killed if he had stayed on that track. But then Tim Drake intervenes and he follows a different path. And someone once asked me, well, what if Tim Drake had not shown up? If he'd stayed on that destructive, more progressively more violent path, could that be what's going on with Affleck? And I said, you're right. If I do the second edition of the book or the follow-up book, I will acknowledge that person by name for having made that suggestion. Sure. It's like, man, I'd like credit for that idea. That's a good one.
Jason Todd appreciation in theory. Yeah, no, it's devastating. I can't even imagine because now he just keeps losing, and then he finally had someone close to him again, and he took him under his wing, and then to feel like he failed them, that's got to be pretty miserable.
And then writers have kept having losses show up, but most of them will come back. They're comic books. Yeah, even an alternate universe, Thomas Wayne might show up, or Mom through a time travel visit, or those kinds of things. But they are staying dead. They are staying dead because that's so important to his background. As when Bob Kane and Bill Finger, 6 months into their run, decided, okay, we've got to give him a background. Why did he do this? And they brainstormed, and they finally decided there's probably nothing more traumatic than seeing your parents killed before your eyes. And when I teach, my courses on these, I can talk about what we know about the psychology of real kids who've actually seen their parents killed to crime. There's more than enough information on them, but that's a hard topic. But I can talk it through about it through a fictional example. I can talk about what happened with those, but through how that would affect Bruce Wayne. I'm still talking about the real human beings, but through that filter of fiction, it's just easier for people to stay with me through what would normally be a really unpleasant topic. So when I do this stuff, I'm as a fan and just somebody who analyzes things, I'm talking about these characters and these stories as a psychologist. And so I'm using, as a fan, I'm analyzing them. But, as a psychologist and teacher, a professor, actually distinguished professor is my rank.
There you go. Even better. You need a sash.
One of 3 at the university. But I'm also using the characters and stories to teach the psychology of real human nature. So it works both ways.
Sure. I think what's unique about Bruce, though, is that he has Alfred to fall back on. He has this huge home. He has all this opportunity, whereas I could never be a social worker in real life because I would deal with heartache and every single day seeing kids suffering, their parents neglect, whether they're alive or dead. All right. It's like it would be really hard for me to have that job. So someone that is able to have the children's interest in they're in their heart, and they're able to dedicate their lives to helping these kids that have literally lost everything and try their hardest not to allow these kids to grow up in a horrible home or be damaged in some way further. I can't even imagine the possibilities. So, I mean, Bruce is actually pretty lucky that he had Alfred that loved him, and he had his home. And not too many people could ever be that lucky. So he's definitely an interesting case study, because I think he's the exception.
That figures into the answer of one of the questions I've gotten a lot over the years, especially earlier on. Lately, it's been more about why he doesn't kill the Joker, but early on, the more common question was, why Robin? What's with that kid? But one of it is that he doesn't want those kids to go through what he went through. Every Robin is somebody who's had tragedy in the background.
Right.
Although Tim Drake first shows up, he hasn't had personal tragedy, but he'd witnessed murder. His parents will get killed because comic books. But
that's how they do.
They've all got skills. They're all going to go out and do things. They're going to go after criminals, and if he doesn't give them some guidance, they're going to be dead real fast. In fact, in the very first Robin story, when he first appeared, Detective 38, Batman even has a thought: if the kid goes to the police like he wants to tonight, he'll be dead by morning. And he thinks about what he personally went through, and he decides, even though he resists for all of one panel in that story,
no, I can't.
He decides, I need to give this kid some guidance, and that's part of when Robin makes any sense. Is when you have kids who already have skills and they got to be given direction, or they're going to go off and do stuff.
Right. And because everything is life or death at that age, right? Even in high school, just the politics of high school that are involved, where you don't go to this party, your life is over. It's so crazy how everything is so absolute when you're a child, and you're just like, you don't understand. It's got to be this way. And Batman's like, dude, I've done it. I've been to the party. You don't need to go. Just come hang out at my house. I'll show you how to be a sweet acrobat.
It's hard to get a live action Robin though. So we had one in the '66 show, but it was, well, you didn't know why he was there. You didn't even. Most people don't even know the word ward.
Ward.
And then in Batman Forever, he's a little older, and by the end, Bruce is referring to him as brother. So it's not a father-son type of relationship, or not knight and squire. It's old school mentorship in those stories.
Yeah, that is a good point. But you know what's interesting too is that I think when Robin in Batman Forever, when Robin came down into the Batcave in his new sweet digs, he's got the new outfit that Alfred made for him. I thought he looked pretty goddamn cool. I thought that was like one of the best Robin looking outfits. It's hard to pull off. So I think starting with the outfit first, and then we'll worry about it later. It's hard for Burt Ward to look cool in that getup in the 60s.
Yeah, and they did not change the outfit until the comics until around 1990, when Tim Drake, finally became the official Robin. That's when he got the new costume. He had worn the old one. Batman said, "Okay, I've lost one. We need to have something where you're covered a little better.
Right.
Some Kevlar in the cape."
Right. Maybe that's where it comes into having a mom, because she wouldn't let him go out without wearing a coat or pants. It's like you can't go out in those little panties. You got to put something on. Wear pants or a coat or something. And I think that's what's one of the great things about having a mom to do that and yell at you. Like, you'll get sick. He's like, no, I'm fine. I got this cape. It's good cape weather.
Yeah,
Right.
Dick ran around in a version of his old circus costume. That's a way to explain the outfit.
Right.
It's like Jerry Robinson. Why didn't you give the kid real pants?
Right. It's a crime, man. It's a crime.
Different time.
Mr. Clark, you are a resident Batman fan. Who is your favorite Batman villain?
Oh, that's hard. So for me, I actually am. I am not a fan of Superman, and I see him more as a villain. So for me, here's why. Superman is a hero because nothing can hurt him, and everything, for the most part, goes right in his life. And if it doesn't go right, he can punch it away. Even if he dies, it's okay. I'm in a death coma. I'll be fine. But like for me, I like Injustice. I like that series of comics. I thought that was true to his character. That it's something like the Joker proved with him. It just takes one bad day, and turn him bad. So I think Batman's best adversary is Superman. Someone who's a friend, but he always knows, man, if you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed one day, well, not wake up because you don't really sleep, but if you decide one day to go ham, you're blowing up the whole planet. And I can't tell you Arkham.
The CW Joker, Crisis. The Joker did that to him, and Superman still stayed true to himself. Although
CW?
On the CW, the Brandon Routh Superman.
we don't count CW.
You're the one who brought up Crisis on Infinite Earth.
Yeah, but that's what they did to Kevin Conroy, man. That was awful. I think Superman. I think Superman because that's like basically the man born with basically the perfect body who can do anything versus the guy born with like the best mind ever.
I think one of the really impressive things with Superman as a character is that he does not go off the rails. Somebody's been raised this powerful, but he happened to land in the field for the best parents on earth, and they raised him to be true to their values. I mean, every alternate version of Superman, he becomes the heroes of whatever values he's raised with. If he's raised in Soviet Russia,
Red Sun,
he's going to have those values. If he's raised in the Dark Earth 2 of Smallville by Lionel Luthor, he's going to be the champion of his values. And that somebody has those powers and does not go wild with them. I think that's part of the strength of his character as a person.
Except for Injustice.
Yeah, well, except for Injustice. But Batman has come. But if you're accepting Injustice, you got to accept that there could be that dark Bruce Wayne that Kevin Conroy played live.
Well, no, see, it wasn't the darkness in him that I didn't like. Yeah. I didn't like that a version of Bruce Wayne who would kill a Batman, he got defeated by being pushed over into an electrical thing.
Yeah, well,
I was like, bro, you gonna just kill Batman with a push in his own house? That's not how this works. Now, I'm okay with the darkness because my favorite version of Batman is Dawnbreaker Batman from Dark Knight's Metal. Because I love him bringing lanterns, and I love Batman, and I love him doing whatever he wants. So you put that all together in one package? Yes, I'm there for it.
That's funny. I was actually always partial to like Mr. Freeze. I really like the story of how he lost his wife, and he was it's more tragic. It wasn't just I had a bad day or I want to rob this bank. He had this other motive, and he was hurting. And I
the
like
Paul
that.
Dini story.
Yeah.
Because originally, before that, Mr. Freeze was flat, two-dimensional. He'd
had that fishbowl on his head.
Mr. Zero, not named Mr. Freeze until he was in the 66 show. But there was never any depth to him until that Paul Dini story on Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, that's great.
My friend Michael Uslan, who produces those movies, said, not with his producer hat, but as a fan, he would love to see a Mr. Freeze movie. He thinks that could be played out well using Paul Dini's story as the basis for it. He thinks that would make a really strong movie. Of course, as the producer of the movies, of course, he loves the idea of producing any of them.
Right. He's biased. No, he's great. No, and that's really cool. And one thing that your book talks about is just like the different types of villains and why they are the way that they are, like on the surface kind of thing. Like as you would have in one of your lectures in your class. It's fun to sort of pick apart these criminal minds versus being like Harley Quinn and falling in love with your patient and going batshit crazy, as it were. Yeah. It's a lot more fun to just kind of see why they are the way that they are. Now, would you say that someone like Joker could ever really be, I don't know if cured is the right word, but what are your thoughts on Joker and I feel like as a patient you have to want to get better. I feel like that's a thing, and I don't think that's really in the cards, as it were.
No, in fact, I mean the reason I just lifted the most recent book is The Joker Psychology: Evil Clowns and the Women Who Love Them. That was is essentially a sequel to the Batman book. So my first book's Batman, my 13th is the Joker, and I think that's an appropriate number for him. But the last chapter is about therapy, and that one I wrote about 2/3 of this book. I've got other people contributing chapters in that one, and the last one is by a dozen different therapists, real quickly going through different types of therapy. Would this one help the Joker? No. Would this one help him? No. Would this one? No. Would this one would make him worse.
There's a lot of that, right?
There are some types of therapy that actually make psychopaths worse because they learn a little bit more. It's like, oh, this is what people want to hear me say. Right. Okay, I got that.
Yeah. The aha moment.
Is Joker really broken, or does he just gets the joke? He just got it, man.
And then so we can end on a more positive note. The last half of the chapter is about Harley. Well, what about types of therapy? Could some of them work with her? It's like maybe if she's in the right state of mind, if she's in the right place, if she's got some social support, and her healthiest social support tends to be her mother in the comics. Although mom died recently, she'll be back.
Throw her one of them Lazarus pits. She'll be all right.
Well, Harley had a chance to bring her back, but decided her mom wouldn't. So, okay, until the next multiverse reboot. Her mother and Poison Ivy. Actually, Harley is more ground. They're both healthier when they hang out together. In any form, whether it's as best friends or friends with benefits, either way, they are
support system.
Yes, and Harley is generally written as being a bit more lucid when she's hanging out with Poison Ivy, and Ivy is more conscious of the fact that she is still a human being. She's not just a plant person.
Right. You saw the cartoon on the Harley Quinn cartoon, right? That's my favorite version of Harley Quinn. I love that team. Like I want that team to be canon. Like I want them to get a movie. Like I love it,
Where they have like a girls' night out kind of thing, and they're just kind of hanging out and
like,
enjoying each other's company.
They have Clayface, who's like a dramatic actor. They got King Shark, who's like their tech guy. Like I love that team with Harley Quinn. Like I think that should be like it going forward.
Yeah, they were going to do a Gotham City Sirens movie with Harley, Ivy, and Catwoman, and I would rather have seen that than the Birds of Prey movie. It's like overall I enjoyed the Birds of Prey movie enough, but as the comic book fan, it's like, okay, the Birds of Prey, that's not Harley Quinn. And it's don't just shoehorn her in. They build these other characters around a Harley Quinn story. Why not call it Harley Quinn then?
Right.
They tried and
they changed it.
Changed the title. The emancipation of one Harley Quinn or something like
Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey and the emancipation of the fantabulous of one Harley Quinn.
Yeah, that's complicated.
That's an mouthful.
Yeah, people need something a little bit easier. They're like,
but it was still nice with Birds of Prey to see them trying to have fun in that universe because some of that stuff they forgot about. A lot of DC movies, they forget how to have fun. And some of it is like, we're not going to do the same thing Marvel is doing. Marvel started out selling y'all in the 60s because Marvel was having fun when DC wasn't. And that has, I think, been part of the success of the Marvel movies. They still have dark things happen. They have tragic things happen. They have moments when they make us cry.
Right.
But they're still having a lot of fun along the way.
Right. We were talking about that on the last one. We were ranking our last live stream. We were ranking the MCU movies, and the fact that Iron Man and Dark Knight came out the same year, and one is like a total rock and roll show and having a good time, and the other one is just an emotional commitment because it's just such a dark and depressing movie. It's just like, oh my god, these are two very different superhero movies.
Right.
It's pretty crazy.
It is. there can definitely be the dark stories. Absolutely be the dark stories, but an entire universe of superheroes where they're not having fun. It's Aquaman having fun, Wonder Woman. It moves along well. It's not quite as lighthearted as more of Aquaman, but they still those two movies shows like you can have the heroes be heroes, have them act like heroes, and people will buy $1 billion in tickets worldwide.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Aquaman was $1 billion for sure, and
Shazam.
Shazam was a lot of fun. You know, that was a very lighthearted and fun movie. Everyone was having a good time. And I actually just saw that for the first time like 3 days ago, and I was like, "Oh, I love this movie." Yeah, it was funny. I just watched The Hills Have Eyes, and I needed a palate cleanser. I was like, "Well, it's like 11:30. I don't want to go to bed just yet. I don't want to dream about homicidal hillbillies." So I watched Shazam, and I enjoyed the hell of it.
It's a fun one. It's kind of a shame that those kids are going to be growing up a lot before they do a Shazam.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. But it's a really good cast and a really good story. And my nephews yelled the word Shazam, I think, for like 3 weeks after that. Yeah, I was like, I'm proud of you guys.
That's the movie ends and he still hasn't taken a superhero name.
Yeah, you forget about that. They came up with some cute ones along the way, that's for sure.
I mean, he kind of said it when he said, "Say my name," and they shout Billy.
I love that.
That was funny.
that was a great joke, and he kind of claimed it as his name when he said that. But what do people in that world call that superhero who wears red? Captain Sparkle Fingers? No.
Yeah, it was great.
They'll give him a name if he doesn't take one.
Yeah. Man, my goodness. Let's talk about Scarecrow for a second. He's a bit of a creeper. And,
he is. I actually would like to have said more about him when I originally did the Batman book. And there's, of course, I did a whole book on one villain. Well, actually, the Joker and a good chunk on Harley. And eventually, I want to do one on all the rest of the villains. Do my Arkham Asylum psychology book.
Yeah.
And there are a lot more. There was so much I wanted to say about the Scarecrow that I wound up focusing on the neuropsychology of his fear gas more so than his own personality in there. And it was, of course, I did something with Poison Ivy. I also focused on the neuropsychology, the neuroscience of what she does in manipulating people. She's written so many different ways. She's been written a little more consistently lately. Some writers would make her outright insane. Right. Some would make her very smart and clever. Some would make her a bit of an idiot. Aside from she invents all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, she's like a bioterrorist.
Right? She's been written so inconsistently that it was hard to pin down what I wanted to talk about her psychologically. So both of them, I talked about the neuroscience of what they do. But Jonathan Crane, you've got this guy who is obsessed with fear. From his own childhood, as the kid who looks like a scarecrow to everybody, and of course he's got the name that reminds everybody of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Sure. And he's nicknamed Scarecrow because of how he looks and how he dresses. He was a psychology professor, not a therapist, through most of his history. And I can't. His personality, I can't imagine why a guy like that would ever be interested enough in people to become a therapist.
Right.
He became a psychologist, so he doesn't have to give a damn what anybody else thinks about him. Those students just have to take notes, and that he fails them or not, he doesn't care. You can be a professor like that. You don't have to be. You can care.
Right. But he's terrifying. Like there's something about his disconnect with humans and how he doesn't care what they're gonna do to themselves. Like the self-inflicting, like whatever, they think they're seeing spiders on them or bats or whatever. They're hallucinating. And he's just sitting back, just kind of like, oh my God, this is so great. I love how this person's so terrified. To have that kind of emotional disconnect from humanity is frightening to me.
I am pretty surprised that he's not a Yellow Lantern yet.
It tried. The Yellow Ring came after him.
Oh, it did? Oh, okay.
Back in was it Brightest Day, Darkest Night, somewhere around that time. The Yellow Ring came for him. But now I'm stuck for whether he was actually briefly a Yellow Lantern or not. Yellow Ring came after Batman because he has and he intimidated away.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. Like Bruce Wayne, you're the power to inspire great fear, and then he was like, "No," and it was like error and left.
That's right. Batman can scare a Yellow Lantern ring.
I love it.
just by being himself. Well, as I said, it is his personality that defines him as a hero. You know, some people even want to say he's not a superhero because he doesn't have powers. It's like Iron Man has toys too, you know. But he is, because of his personality. Well, he turns himself into a larger life figure, the urban legend. But he is the one with no superpowers who can walk into a room full of people who can fly, read minds, and run faster than speed of light, and he intimidates them.
Yeah. And I remember when all the league leaves and it's just Batman, Superman, they're called the world's finest. They get better when they lose members.
right.
We got this one question.
Sure.
It says, why does it happen so often that these complete geniuses go off the deep end to become supervillains? Are they the only ones competent enough to be so, or is it something else?
Well, that last part of it are the ones competent enough. They're the ones capable of coming up with their own fantastic toys. You know, the Scarecrow with his fear gas, the Poison Ivy. That's why it's like, once a writer is stupid, it's like, you missed this character. She first arrived in the 60s with no superpowers. She did not have superpowers until the 90s. You know, she invented poison toxins and plants. Well, she was immune to all poison, but with her, it was her strength of personality. And so these are characters who could make the things they needed to make. The Joker, he's constantly coming up with new versions of his murderous gas. It's like, what kind of chemical can I do that will make them grin like me? And the specific things, the Riddler, in certain ways, he's the smartest of them all. The Joker has even said that. It's like, you should be a bigger challenge to Batman than you are, you know, because you have the ability to do this. So I'm going to throw you in a death trap, and you either figure your way out of this or you die. And the Riddler figured his way out. The Riddler is his intelligence, for his intellectual passion, for his fascination with the puzzles and solving things. He loves coming up with the riddles, obviously, but even the puzzles in a larger scale. For a while, he was a cryptographer for the government when they're then going to send him to the Suicide Squad. So for a while, he was a detective. I thought the Riddler, as the former criminal detective who was really the same jerk. I love that version of the Riddler. So for so many of them for especially Batman's enemies, for them to challenge him, they have to be smart.
Right.
And Batman has...
Otherwise, they're just a goon, right?
Does anybody really want to see Blockbuster, the motion picture? For those of you who know the character Blockbuster out there, this is a guy who gets turned into a big giant thug. Except in one brief version, he got smart. But Solomon Grundy. Do you really want Solomon Grundy the movie?
Born on a Monday. Yeah, no, I know. Someone had pitched the idea of a Riddler movie done in the vein of like the Saw horror movies. That would be pretty intense.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be gory and awful, but cool at the same time.
I'm interested.
I really wanted to see a Nolan version of the Riddler. And it looks like we're getting a version of the Riddler.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
And so when I saw, okay, now they're playing with a smart, dark Riddler. I think they're going darker than Nolan would have.
Yeah.
And in real life, the kind of villains who are mostly interested in the intellectual puzzles, they don't tend to be killers. They tend to be thieves. Like there's a particular type of thief called a riddlesmith. That's the term for one they'll leave messages to taunt police. These exist. And this is what Riddler was through a lot of his history. More recent years, they've been playing with a more murderous Riddler. And I will admit, that's going to work better at a movie screen.
Right. It is always fun when you learn about these, whether it be like a serial killer or a terrorist whose ego is so far gone that they're literally taunting the police and sending letters, and then they get caught.
Yeah.
Even like the Unabomber, right? Yeah.
BTK.
Yeah. There you go. Perfect one. Yeah. And it's like how big must your ego? Let's knock down a few walls, raise the roof to make room for your ego, and it literally got you caught. And Riddler has been victim of that a couple of times. You get him monologuing, and then all of a sudden he gets the bang pow to the face, and he's done.
Yeah, I actually referred to a couple of them. It's generally not by name. Like BTK, I never called him Dennis Rader in the Joker book because I didn't want to say his name. Yeah, likewise, with my only mention of the shooter from the Aurora Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did at the end of the book in my afterward. I made a note. It's like, why wasn't he in here? Because one, he didn't really call himself the Joker. So right there, it's not so relevant. And then
Yeah,
two,
the police officer being interviewed dropped the name Joker.
he didn't call himself that,
Yeah.
and that takes him out of the relevance. He was not inspired by the movie because he hadn't seen it.
Right.
Right.
So, but yeah, you some to try to get your head around the Joker, who is a serial spree mass murderer. Yeah, in real life, nobody gets to be a serial spree mass murderer.
Yeah.
And
Your head would explode.
You got to look at a lot of different kind of criminals to get inside the head of somebody like that. After I finished writing that book on the Joker, I took a break for a while. It was just like, okay, I've got to take a break. This is the other books I tend to focus on heroism. What's even when you get into the dark side of people going to the dark side in Star Wars or the Walking Dead. The Walking Dead psychology. A spell when they're going, it's like, what does it take to hang on to your humanity? You're looking at what does it take for people who are basically good and decent to hang on to their humanity. Can they? Will they, go become a Rick-tator, as people called Rick when he was being a dictator?
Sure.
But so I'm generally looking at what's the best part of human nature or trying to hang on to it. You do have to talk about the villains. I had to bring up the case studies on the villains and other references in the Batman book. The Joker book was the first one that was thoroughly about a villain, and I'm going for the one is just the worst person. And I'm reading accounts of real serial killers and others to get a hang for which, I read a whole lot more, studied a lot more of their backgrounds than the few I specifically refer to. I interviewed a retired FBI profiler for the book too, talking to him about how he sees this relating to these fictional criminals, the real criminals that he would investigate, or people, the myth of a relationship between the serial killer and their pursuer. Because you see that in fiction over and over. And he said, no, that doesn't happen. It's like you don't find the pursuers who fall for the serial killers because they see just the carnage that these people left behind.
Right. No,
see, and now we get to the part where we're not laughing so much because I moved into real criminals.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up The Walking Dead, too, because there are scarier things than zombies in the world, and that is very much the case for humans. We can find a way to deal with zombies, but we have no idea when we go into town and we come across another group, how are they going to act? And I always thought it was remarkable how Shane in the series, was so far ahead of the curve with Rick, where he figured that out. Like, this is how we have to be. And Rick literally ruined his friendship with him and kills him. And then the next season later, he's like, yeah, we got to lock this shit down. We got to be in charge.
Wait a minute, though. Shane went a little too nuts with the killing, though.
So he did.
Shane was about to kill Rick.
Yeah, no, I get it. But there's the strain on their friendship started with having two different ideologies on what they needed to do to survive.
I think the strain started with him sleeping with his wife.
Well, he was already asleep through the whole thing. The world had already ended.
Like a week later, I was like, yo, that's a little soon. Come on.
It could have been 2 days. A week's better than 2 days.
Before The Walking Dead started airing, I talked to John Bernthal about the first time he read the comic. It's like, I've got this part. And he's reading through, and he gets to issue, I think it's 6, when Shane gets killed. And he's like, wait a second. I know he died that early. He did last longer in the show. Shane is a really good example of somebody that people can argue about. It was like, well, Shane right about some things? Where it's like, no, Shane's killing too much. He's killing the wrong people. It's like, yeah, but he's right about some things, and Rick's acting like him later on. He's a really good one for talking about what does bring it out. I speculated on him. I go through major antagonists on special features throughout the Walking Dead book. Some from the comics that nobody ever saw, like this one killer they encountered in the prison. And because of the comics, I got to talk about Negan and the Whispers before they'd actually been on the show yet.
Right.
So it still feels kind of current, even though this looks a couple years old now. And as you're going through, and Shane is one. Okay, Shane, does Shane qualify as a psychopath? And you guys like, no, he was a normal person before that.
Right.
We don't have a lot of information about his background, but we know that he was a good old boy. He was a regular person, and so the circumstances have brought out the potential, the worst side of human nature. but he was absolutely he cared about people. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, a normal
He
guy
turned
put in
real
an
quick,
extraordinary situation is
Yep.
what it was. Yeah.
He turned hella quick.
Yeah.
Like he's
It's
like,
the heat- it's
fine,
that-
let's do it. You know, like
It's that
come on,
Atlanta
dude.
heat, man. It makes you go crazy. It's like Fury Road out there. As soon as your brain starts to cook a little bit, and you don't act normal. It's a thing. Can't get too hot. Look at this question on the bottom here. Go ahead and read it, Mr. AJ.
Says, is it possible that the Joker has figured out who Batman really is, but he doesn't quite allow himself to realize it because he knows if he kills Batman, he destroys himself as well?
Yeah, Scott Snyder played around with that in the comics, or writer Scott Snyder, where it was really clear that at a point that the Joker had a chance to know who Batman was and refused to look. He just would not. But Bruce was there, and the Joker just wouldn't look. And even kind of looking in the direction, he just didn't see him. Bruce Wayne was just not at his radar, and he had played around with making them think he knew Batman was at that point. Later on, one of the Jokers knows. It's real clear. One of the Jokers knows, but right now they're doing this story with three Jokers. One of them's already been killed.
That was nuts though when Batman asked the Mobius share, and it's like, who was Joker? And it's like, which one? I'm like, bruh, what?
That actually, I had thought there should be two, because every deck has two, and then they played around with some version of that idea. It's like, yeah, it's more of a story if you've got three, and
Right.
they're spinning that story out in the comics now. Finally, and it's like, who are these Jokers? Who are these Jokers?
Right. It was cute.
But yeah, but
I
the Joker has, and he didn't want to know in the movie The Dark Knight. That's one more people in the audience will know. The Joker at first wants to make Batman reveal his identity. Then he says, I've changed my mind. Well, who knows? Maybe that was his idea all along or not. But he says, I've changed my mind. He doesn't want Batman to have another layer to him. The Joker, at least the real Joker, or which version? He prefers to just think of Batman as the real person, which he's kind of right there.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want Batman to have other layers. He wants that Dark Knight's inner part just to show more layers of darkness. He doesn't really want Bruce Wayne.
I think like he in Dark Knight, Joker had that one line. You know, like, I'm like a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught him. You know,
Yeah.
But he's obviously in the middle of an elaborate plan. Do I look like a guy with a plan?
Yes!
You are a guy with a plan. And that version, that is before this Arthur Fleck version. That is one of the more psychotic versions of the Joker at moments. Like we see the little ticks of his mouth and some other signs of tardive dyskinesia. Somebody who used to be on an antipsychotic and has some long-term side effects.
Right.
When he's saying this, is he so crazy that he doesn't realize he has a plan, or is he lying? When he gives the gangsters that playing card, contact me, and he just leaves a card. There's no information on that card.
I know, that's great. Here's my card. And
we don't know. Is he crazy enough that it doesn't occur to him they can't contact him through that card?
Sure.
Or is that just him messing with people? I'm inclined to think it's more him messing with people because he does that so much, but you don't know, and that's one of the most wonderful things about that character. And Batman is kind of himself. He can wrap his head around Edward Nygma and the Penguin and others. He can get some idea of what they're up to, but he can't get a feel for what the Joker has in his head. And the Joker is one where we don't need to know a definite background for him. Arthur Fleck is somebody else. We don't need to know it's a great movie. I love that Joker movie.
Yeah.
It's disturbing too. And it makes you cringe. But it's a great story. So I don't want to put it down when I say that's not the comic book Joker. That's not our traditional Joker. But we don't need to know. When there's a wonderful line in the graphic novel, The Killing Joke. Do you see where we are on the time?
You're fine.
Okay, when he's saying sometimes he remembers its past one way, sometimes he remembers it a different way, and he says, if I have to have a past, I prefer it to be a multiple choice.
Yeah, I love that line. So good.
The animated movie played the line down. I think that is one of the most important lines in the history of writing that character, and it wasn't something Alan Moore originally had in his script. He turned in the script to Len Wein, and Len was telling me about this in front of an audience. Drop those names. I miss Len. But Len was, he's read this. He said, okay, this is very, very good story. And the background fits the story you're telling, but nobody living has the right to have a definite background for the Joker, and nobody should. It's best if we don't know for sure. We don't even know for sure how human he is. He said just throw in something to make it a little more iffy. And so that's how it came out, where Alan Moore came up with such an important concept.
Sure. I like to think of Heath Ledger's Joker as like now that you mention it, like kind of like a Don Quixote, where it's all just kind of in his head. Like he sees the world differently, and we're just kind of along for the ride, and it's horrifying.
When he's telling those different backgrounds. When he told the first one, it's like, we don't need to know the Joker's background. But when he told the second one, okay, this is great. His background, inconsistent background. Is he believing it in the moment because he's kind of psychotic, or is he's the psychopath who doesn't care what's true and what's not? He says what's meaningful in the moment. That third one, when he starts to say, "Did I ever tell you I got these scars?" And Batman's, "No, but I know how you got." We pull for Batman for not falling for that crap, but part of us wanted to know what was the third lie going to be.
Right, but I speaking of Batman having none of that, I loved in the Dark Knight Returns when he finally kills Joker. He's like, you know what? I'm old. I ain't got time for this. Just I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm like, that's that old man lack of patience. Nope. Sorry, you gotta go.
and it's crazy how, like, he's wearing all the white and he goes on the talk show and like everything. Like he's better. It's okay. This is a new and improved Joker. And it's like, this is like it's like giving Jason Voorhees his machete, and you're like, okay, have fun. So crazy how they do that. Blows me away. So, like, just you mentioned the Arthur Fleck one. That is a Gotham that's also very dirty. There's garbage everywhere. There's rats everywhere. There also has a corruption problem both in the government and the police force. People watch the news on their TV. All the information that we get is from our TV. It's all very relatable stuff, and it is kind of crazy to see that. He's going to see the social worker. He is on this government program to get his meds, which he's taking, but then it all stops. He's no longer able to get his meds.
The system has failed that guy, very much so. Or is that his delusion?
Right.
Is it that he decided not to take it, but he wants to think they won't give it to him?
Right.
It is. There's that question.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah.
How much of the Joker? Yeah. Oh, you got to read it. It's your job.
How much of the Joker movie do you think is real, and how much is Arthur's delusions?
That's all right.
Yeah.
Now I mentioned my friend Michael, the producer of these things. So the day the movie came out, I walked up to him at a New York Comic Con, and first words out of his mouth were not hello. It was, "Have you seen it?" And then he said, "Okay. When we've got time, I want to talk to you about it." And so then what he wanted to know my thought on how much of it was real and how much was not. It is. I think the director has a definite idea, but he also deliberately left room for people to speculate. What Michael told me is they surveyed people, and the one that people are 50-50 split on is the big crowd scene where they get Fleck out and are raising him up like a hero at the end, where the writers are praising him. He says people are 50-50 split on that scene as to whether that really happens or is in Arthur's head. And my own inclination is to think that part is among the delusions, because Arthur was on his way to Arkham when suddenly he's out and they're worshiping him, the kind of thing he fantasizes about, and then he's at Arkham. How did he wind up at Arkham? Is he just suddenly there talking to a therapist who looks a whole lot like that social worker from earlier on? The script even says that. The script says in the script that this therapist is supposed to be very reminiscent of that social worker from early on. So I think, because I thought a lot of it was delusions, even when those guys beat him up back in the subway.
That was a great scene, by the way, with the lights and the camera work, and it was creepy. It was good,
and it's awfully similar to the moves the kids made when they beat Arthur up at the very beginning.
Right,
similar kicks, similar moves. I think the thing in the subway. I don't think those guys attacked him like that. It's because of the similarities to that opening thing. Why is he suddenly killing? Why aren't more people reacting as to this guy shooting at people in the subway?
Right. No, that's all really good points. And once and when you see that she's his not girlfriend isn't there and not in the room with him, then that's when you're really like calling everything into question. Like, God damn it, well, how much of this movie is real? I don't know. I've been sitting here for almost 2 hours, and now I'm second guessing everything. I mean, Todd Phillips definitely made the movie that he wanted to make, and
usually when a movie says, "Oh, how much of it was real, how much of it was not," it's like, I don't care. It's all fiction.
right.
It's usually some kind of cheat just for the shock. However, this movie is about this psychotic guy.
Right.
And I thought they worked really well for this movie. That there's this. It's like, well, was that friend really there? We know he's killing some people. And it did occur to me earlier, and it occurred to me kind of early, I don't think she's really having this conversation with him. And so, I'm sure a lot of people say that when they didn't realize it until she was not really at the door.
Right.
But this is the kind of thing I think about. So,
sure. But I think psychology is like that too, because when you learn about terms or learn vocabulary words in psychology, it seems so common sense, but it's not until someone tells you. You're just like, oh yeah, well that makes sense. It's all about the explanation.
Well, like Fight Club, Brad Pitt says, "Oh yeah, all kinds of people said they knew that Tyler Durden wasn't real," and he said they're lying to themselves.
No, exactly.
Well, with me, I was wondering early on about the multiple personality so much that I even wondered if Helena Bonham Carter's character was also part of his not quite psychosis with multiple personality, but
sure.
So I was wondering if it was even more messed up than it really was. So,
and well, Fight Club at the very beginning, he's like, "I know this because Tyler knows this." That's a pretty big hint. When you rewatch it, you're like, well, shit, there it is in the first 5 seconds of the movie.
I rewatched it. That's when you rewatch immediately.
Yeah.
And then I started spotting the subliminal Tylers where he shows up for one frame.
Yeah, one frame
in a couple different, in 2 or 3 different places.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's like they have veered off into Fight Club. It's the same kind of stuff though. So the same kind of hard, dark thing, looking at some very bizarre aspects of human nature where you go, well, nobody's going to do the Fight Club thing. Nobody's going to do the Joker thing. But that does let us talk about, well, what do real people do? You know, who does go that far out? The people who are the worst killers in the world. How many of them are psychotic? The most psychotic ones tend to be too psychotic to pull it off very well. So they tend to get caught pretty quickly. So the ones who are able to do it the longest, even when they might try to claim, insanity in court, it's like, dude, you wouldn't have gotten away with it for that long if you'd actually been insane.
I know there's some really, especially when they have a double life. You mentioned BTK or like Golden State Killer, original Night Stalker, whatever. They had family that was like, it's a surprise to them, and it's like, oh my gosh, I was living with this person, I hugged this person, I spent the night at their house, or whatever the case may be. It's my family, my uncle, whatever. And it's so crazy that they had this double life. And it's like, when you look at Batman villains, it's like, if they just had like a cheat day or a spa day, a treat yourself kind of day at the right time earlier in their development, would they be this far gone? And we're just so fragile. And I love talking about mental health. It was something it's so taboo for so many people, and we all need to have those days where we just have a treat yourself day. This is my day. I'm gonna take care of myself. And it blows me away. Like someone like me that laughs every second of my life, I have bad days. I feel terrible sometimes, but I need someone to talk to about it. Having a support system, having friends, having people to talk about, having that dialogue, and just knowing that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And it just blows me away that more people aren't like that. And hopefully that'll change one day.
That would have helped the Joker a lot.
Right?
It's like, hey man, take a day. Just take a day.
Take a day. Play some video games. Hang out.
Don't worry about gas. Just hit the beach. Don't kill people, please.
Adam Glass, when he was writing Suicide Squad, she had Harley talk about that. She's, he's not out doing these crimes every single day. There are times when we're just at home watching TV or playing games. There is that side of him too. But most of us don't see that. It's like, no, he's spending all his time planning his next crimes. That's what we think he's doing.
Hanging out at rundown carnivals and shit. Looking for some feng shui in a rundown derelict carnival.
Earlier, when you were talking about favorite Batman, I want to hear your thoughts. If there were a live-action Batman Beyond, who should play old Bruce?
Michael Keaton.
Yeah, I would say Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton's a really good choice.
Yeah.
I used to think Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Because so much of it is directly taken from him. You watch the pilot of Batman Beyond when he says, "Get off my property." He's channeling Clint
Sure.
Eastwood, "Get off my lawn." But Eastwood's older now. I don't think he'd enjoy it as much. And now,
Yeah, he's like 90.
Yeah,
91.
well, he could do it.
Oh yeah,
but,
sure, he could do it.
But I think now it has to be Keaton. Conroy could do it. Kevin Conroy could do it. Not as much of the audience would really appreciate it as Michael Keaton, though. And now he's popping up in the Flash movie.
I know, it's so cool. I love that, man.
Yeah.
No,
I love it. And depending on how Pattinson does, he might be a good pick for Terry since, multiverse. He could be more than one person,
Sure.
Pattinson, so we haven't seen much of his performance yet or what they're going to do to make him look taller. But one thing I do know, he's got a good Batman voice.
Mm-hmm.
So far, the best live-action Batman voice of the 21st century because Bale,
Thursday.
And then Affleck, sounding like he's breathed the type of gas that deepens your voice.
Right. But I was really against Pattinson being Batman because Twilight, and I was like, no, not gonna work. And then I saw the trailer, and I was like, okay.
The bone crunching trailer.
When people have asked me about this in recent, like with Affleck when he was cast, people were saying, "What do you think of that?" And I made this comment. I remember Michael Keaton can't be Batman, Heath Ledger can't be the Joker, Anne Hathaway can't be Catwoman. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I'm open-minded. Affleck has more range than a lot of people realize, and he loves the stories.
And he's a big dude. Like, he is a menacing Batman. Like, I've never seen... He's like a gorilla in that suit. He's ginormous. He's picking up, like, truck tires and barrels and throwing people all over the place. And he is a terrifying Batman.
He was the first one to really have the Batman jaw.
Yeah. He's got a good one.
And, like, there's one moment, I think it's in BVS, there's one moment where Batman is, like... I think like he's like flying through the air and he hits the exact same pose from the cover of The Dark Knight Returns.
Sure.
And like me and like three of the people in the theater went, ah! And everyone's like, what? I'm like, no, sorry, I'm a nerd. Just continue watching.
Back in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, in Sam Raimi's movies, you kept seeing covers reproduced on screen.
Right.
And for those of us who recognize those covers, it's like, oh, this is delighting me where nobody else here is going to care.
Right. No, that's the cool thing about all those Easter eggs. And it's, especially when there's after the movie comes out and there's all these articles about things you might have missed, it just expands on it that much further. Like, obviously they put so much time and effort and energy to recreate this for the fans. And what's funny about that is so many diehards are so anti these movies, and it's like, dude, they're doing it for you. Just take a step back and appreciate this shit for half a second, man. Blows me away.
I remember when fans were complaining about Raimi's Spider-Man encountering the enemies in the wrong order. It's like, seriously? Let's get some good stories. Right? Let's delight in the fact that the rest of the world is loving these things that we've loved.
Yeah, Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite comic book movies ever made.
It still holds up pretty well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I could cosplay as Doc Ock because I have the same cup size as Doc Ock. So it works out pretty good.
I've done a little. I used to be asked, "What do you ever cosplay?" It's like, no, I go as myself. But so many of my favorite people to hang out with cosplay, I felt I was missing out. So I cosplay as either the War Doctor, the one Doctor Who with a beard. When I wake up in the morning, my hair's kind of doing what his does, and just most expensive outfit I ever bought was what I did for the War Doctor. But then I got Darth Negan. So once I figure out how to build the lightsaber baseball bat, it's like, oh, I've got to do that. So I've got a vest that looks like his jacket, but with a Sith robe, so it's a lot cooler than and some other
little handkerchief thing.
Yeah. Go to San Diego Comic-Con with both my main cosplays wear scarves.
In case you need to rob a stagecoach, you can just kind of go like that, and you're ready to go.
There we go.
I hope he somehow gets a chance to play Flashpoint Batman.
Oh,
he was Thomas Wayne. he deserves a chance to put on the cowl at least once.
Yeah, Flashpoint's one of my favorite stories ever. I think that one's incredible. And then the very idea that Bruce is the one that got shot in the alley is pretty intense.
and his mom became the Joker.
Joker, yeah.
And then, of course, I love when Barry's mom's like, well, you have to let me go because clearly the world sucks if I'm alive. So,
right.
Barry. It's like,
right.
But she'd been alive before that. People think, so many people think it's like it's always been that Barry Allen's mom got killed. And it's like, no, that doesn't get introduced until 2011. He was one of the few superheroes to have parents. Like I see somebody do a drawing for Father's Day or Mother's Day, and there's Barry Allen getting a card while the other superheroes are just looking at him.
Right. They're like, oh, jealous, green-eyed monsters. What's cool about Flash, though, like I mean, Barry Allen in general is just he was gone for so long. It's 20-something years where he was just out of the picture, and that's pretty crazy. That we all joke about heroes coming back to life, and he was gone for a long time. It's kind of sad. Breaks your heart a little bit.
The writers at the time said Barry Allen will stay dead for as long as there are more stories to tell with him dead than there would be with him having come back.
Right, that makes sense.
And they made it last for a long time. Well, Jason Todd stayed dead for a long time. Bucky stayed dead longer. Sure. And then Bucky and Jason Todd come back the same month. If the comics had stayed on production, they'd have come back the same day. But one of them got thrown off of their production schedules. But they had new stories. The Winter Soldier, that movie, The Winter Soldier, would not have worked if Ed had not decided, I'm going to bring back Bucky, and this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
That's
always a way.
That's so important for the stories that they've been telling. But they had the right story. You see a bunch of stories where they just figure out a way to bring somebody back. But what's the reason for bringing this character back?
Right.
You got to have a really strong reason. Nobody even worries about characters dying now. I was once at a New York Comic-Con like a month or two after they killed Nightcrawler. And there's a panel of Marvel writers. And audience member goes to the mic, when will Nightcrawler come back? And they all just hang their head. Like, we can't get them to buy into what we're doing because it's just they come back so regularly.
I remember a few years ago during the Fear Itself event when they made this whole big deal about Thor having to die, and the prophecy, blah, blah, he dies. And then the next week, Thor was just back. And I was like, oh, they're not even going to explain it? Oh, he's just here. Okay, because you just did a whole event leading to his death. So, okay. Screw me, I guess, right?
Right. Wasn't it like when Peter Parker died and Doc Ock took over as Spider-Man? They switched minds and
Spider-Man.
Yeah. Was it Dan Slott that was writing that or whatever? And he's getting death threats like, "Oh my God, you killed Peter Parker."
He had been wanting to do. I mean, Peter wasn't dead; his body was alive. Doc is the one whose body died. But
he's as bad as Captain America's Hail Hydra moment.
He had been pitching the mind swap over and over, and the editor just kept saying no, and they finally go, sure. It's like, Peter Parker actually died in the comics, and then the other emerges out of this cocoon web thing, and as a new Peter Parker. So we've actually for a long time not been watching the original Peter Parker. He died. he died. It's not the Clone Saga. It's well after that, but I think it's later 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it was in the 90s. Yeah. I thought I remembered his 90s. I was in junior high or something.
Yeah, I think it was later in the 90s.
It was out of web juice or something like that, and doesn't make it.
Yeah, Peter Parker died and stayed dead.
Yeah, that's a shame. What can you do?
They all just everybody just kind of forgets that. Oh yeah, he got replaced.
Yeah, when Superman died, that was devastating for me. I was like 14 years old, and my mom went to the comic book store. And my parents went to the comic book store and picked it up and brought it to me at school. I was getting out of school and they're like, hey, don't take the bus today. And I go out to the parking lot and my mom's standing by the car holding the black bag with the Superman logo bleeding and everything. And I was like, oh my God. But then I'm reading it. I'm just like crying like, oh my God, I hate this. This is the worst. Because I just love Superman. He's the man. Even though Mr. Clark can't stand him.
I love that.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
I have several copies of that book.
Oh,
still in the black bag.
Yeah, it comes with like a little like a memorial band that you can wear, and it had this awesome poster with all the heroes lining up and they're carrying his casket and everything. It was awesome, but
it was
book. Devastating.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Just hate Superman.
Oh no, this guy. What can you do? All right, well, I think that pretty much wraps it all up. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This has been fun. Or I'd have pieced out 45 minutes ago if it weren't.
Right? Just throw all your shit in the air like, hell with these guys. I'm done. I got a Batman class to teach right now. I'm better than this shit. But everyone, please visit bluefinbrands.com. We have our New York Comic-Con sale going on right now. It's awesome. It's now through Sunday, and we have all kinds of bundles, exclusives, super deals, awesome giveaways. We're giving away $5,000 in prizes. Go to bluefinbrands.com, enter to win. It'll be amazing. And you have a fabulous weekend and enjoy the rest of your Comic-Con experience. And Dr. Travis Langley, thank you again for swinging by. It was an absolute blast.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you.
are the best.